NWI. This is NWI Takes Actions podcast. We're very excited. Today's our inaugural episode, and we're rushing to get something out before the big day of action this weekend, which are the No Kings protests taking place all over the country. Our region and our state are very well represented. There are protests springing up in every community that I can think of all across the state. And as the president's rhetoric and belligerent attitude towards protesters has accelerated, it's more important than ever that we have a sense of what's permissible at protests. How do we keep ourselves safe? How do we protect our rights? And I have found the absolute best person I can think of to talk about these topics. So with no further ado, let me introduce Julie Storbeck. She is the president of the Indiana State and the NWI Regional Chapter of the National Organization for Women. Not of, folks, for. Thank you so much for your time today. I know you've got your hands full, as does everybody that is trying to stand as a barrier between this administration's overreach and the trampling on our rights. We have got a whole bunch of protests planned. What are your thoughts in general about how protesting has been going in Northwest Indiana? Have you been seeing issues cropping up? Have you been
Not a
hearing
lot.
reports
Not a
of
lot.
any problems?
And considering the volume of activity, I am supercharged to see Indiana as a whole just showing up and representing. I think it is just amazing that this state that is considered deep red and is the least politically involved state in the country is showing up like just everywhere. You see protests everywhere, and you see people getting out by the hundreds and by the thousands getting out and showing up day after day, week after week, time and again, changing their schedules. I see people bringing their little kids with them. I see people bringing their parents. I see grandparents bringing their grandchildren with them. And I love what I'm seeing. The problems have been very few and far between. And I think it has lulled some folks into a false sense of security, because we don't have ICE in most places. We don't have police interactions in most places. And we have very new and young protesters who are very excited to be out there. And we have to remain vigilant, because when people say it can't happen in Indiana, it can. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
The very first protest I did, it was in Crown Point right after the Shock and Awe campaign first started, and 50501 didn't even exist yet. And we're just like, we can't. And I, like you, have been very pleasantly surprised by the respectful attitude of the police that I've interacted with here in NWI. But after coming off an interview with an immigration lawyer, she did mention to me that unlike Chicago, where police are not allowed to interact or send names to ICE or support ICE activities, in Indiana, they absolutely do and are. So it is incredibly important for people to be mindful of their rights and their behavior at a protest. So Julie, walk us through the best practices and how you can best protect yourself at a protest.
I could easily talk for 2 hours on this topic of protest safety. It is that important. But in a nutshell, the biggest thing that you can remember when you're at a protest is that, first of all, always be aware of your surroundings. When people come and stand on the corner with us for the first time, I always take like 3 to 5 minutes just to give them a quick brief overview. The number one thing that I always tell people is to always be aware of your surroundings. And this is the part where normally I would be moving around instead of sitting in a chair. You will see me at a protest, and you will see all of my protesters, all my volunteers. You will see we are always moving. We are constantly moving. And we are not doing that because everybody's got to go to the bathroom or we've got ants in our pants. We're doing it because we are staying in touch with our surroundings. And you're always looking, you're watching the cars that go by so that you can know, whoa, that's the third time that car's come around the block. I'm going to pay attention. You're watching, believe it or not, you're watching roof lines to see if somebody is on a roof. They could be a sniper. They could have a slingshot. And that little rock coming at you, a little slingshot coming at you, that'll take out 9. Okay. They could have water balloons. You don't know what they got. They could have a paint balloon. I got started protecting patients outside of Planned Parenthood. I can tell you that a water balloon full of paint hurts when it hits. You don't want to mess with that. So you always want to be.
Okay, so right now you're my hero, FYI. Just so you know. All right, guys, round of applause for Julie because god damn, you're doing the Lord's work.
So that was my start. But number 1 would be aware of your surroundings. Always know who is standing next to you, who is standing next to them, who is coming up and down the sidewalks. Are these your people? Do you know that person that is coming up towards you? Always be aware of your surroundings and always have an escape plan. Don't stand in front of a parked car. If you're standing in front of a parked car and something happens, you got nowhere to go. You're done. Don't stand in front of a tree or landscaping, because if you're standing in front of a tree or landscaping and you got to turn and run, when you turn around, you're going to hit the tree. You're not going to get out of there. So always have an escape plan. Have one major escape route where you know this is where my car is parked. This is a street. I can go from point A to point B in a hurry with a clear path. There are no obstructions. Then have a second escape plan. Because if you're getting caged, you need to know how to get out of that cage. And by caging, I mean either police, either law enforcement, or a counter protest can come at you and they will separate out, or they'll come at you from different directions, and then you got nowhere to go because you've been caged in. So you want to have a second escape plan so that if they come and they block this street, you know a second street you can take. And if you're at a protest where you know there may be arrests and you know you don't want to be arrested, be in the back of the protest.
When I spoke with our immigration expert this morning, because there are going to be undocumented immigrants that are going to want to protest. So I asked her, do you have some safety tips for these folks that want to express their feelings? They want to be in solidarity with everybody else protesting. And she said the best thing they could do is basically everything that you just said. Be constantly aware of your surroundings, have an escape plan, make certain that if you don't want to be arrested, that you are in the back of the crowds. And she also recommended that they avoid the Indiana protests because Indiana has such a more cozy relationship with ICE than Illinois does.
Yeah, our former county sheriff
No, go ahead, Julie.
Actually did on more than one occasion contact ICE after making an arrest of a person of color. Did not wait for ICE to contact him. He was being proactive. That's Indiana for you.
Dude, it takes a special kind of human to be an ICE officer. That's all I'm going to say.
They believe they're doing the right thing. They believe they're protecting America. Yeah. And there's some that are just plain sadistic.
That right there. Parent and child separations at the border. That's the one I felt right then and there that our country had crossed a line that we would have a really hard time finding our way back from. So we've got a bunch of young protesters out here for the first time, and people who are new to organizing. Like, for example, I've organized multiple protests, so it's not. When I did my first protest, I wasn't thinking boo about safety. Would you say that the first step is to be sure that you've appointed at least one person?
You need to have, you have to have a safety team, and you need to have at least one safety captain who can build out that team. But another piece to being safety is having a police liaison. And that's another thing that people don't think about, is you need to have a person who has some relationship with the police, who is the point person. When you get to the protest, the first thing you do as the liaison is you go up to the police, wherever they are gathered, and you walk right in and be like, okay, so who's in charge? Who's in charge? And they'll tell you who's in charge. And the reason you do that is because now you're in charge. Because the first thing you did was you asked who was in charge. And the first thing the cops did was to tell you. They answered you. They took your direction. So on a psychological level, you have now established yourself as a person of authority. That matters with police. They're very much into authority and hierarchy, which for women can be really hard because we don't tend to be hierarchical. But for police, regardless of gender, they're very much in it. So you go in, the first thing you do, then when you see the person who's in charge, then, hi, now I've got my hand out. He's going to take your hand and shake it, right? So now you have established the rapport. You see, you are leading the entire interaction. And all you've done is say, who's in charge? Hi, I'm Tracy. I'll be the police liaison today. And then you get their cell phone info, you give them your cell phone info, you talk to them about, you ask questions, like, okay, so where are you all planning on being situated? Okay, I know my people are going to be here, where are your people going to be? So you're establishing that rapport, you're establishing a relationship right at the get-go, and that is crucial to keeping your protesters safe. Every protest organizer has exactly one job, and that is to keep their protesters safe. You don't work for anybody other than your protesters. So by having a police liaison, establishing that rapport, exchanging information, making sure that your protesters all know who you are, and that liaison knows if there's a problem, they're going to come and find you, and you're going to deal with it. And your protesters know if there's a problem, they're going to come and find you, and you're going to deal with it. And that keeps the protesters from engaging in counter protesters. That keeps your protesters safe.
Yes. Yes. And it also allows you to set the tone. You can manage all the conflicts for people. So let's pretend that things are going kind of south. Well, what are people's rights at a protest?
Nope.
If a police officer says, get out of here,
Nope.
do you have
You
to?
don't have to do a single thing they tell you to do. Nope, unless they detain you. If things start to go south, law enforcement comes up and starts talking to you, don't answer them. That's your number one right. Don't answer them. Ask them, am I being detained? Am I free to go? If you are free to go, go. Just turn around, walk away. That's it. Just go. If they don't want to let you go, if there's a conflict about that, then you would say, let me find my police liaison. That way, the cop knows you are not booking on him. So they are trained to see everything as a potentially threatening situation. So if you just say, okay, and then you turn around to leave, now that cop is going to not have a good feeling about you. You don't want him or her to think that you are just taken off and that you're a bad guy escaping, right? So if you say something like, I'm going to go get my police liaison.
Right.
You can follow me if you want. Now they know that you are not booking out of there. You're just going to chain of command. And you've established a little piece of authority because you are now giving him permission to what? Follow you. But you've done it in a totally and completely respectful way.
I see. And you've also let him know that it's not going to be attention that isn't unobserved. These are clever tips. I wish that I had been
You're thinking about it
this
now.
when I was
And that's the important part. Everybody who's been protesting.
Now,
before we got to this point, this is great. We've been establishing community like we have never seen before. Now it's time to get a little bit more serious. Yep.
yes, and
It is
get
definitely
ready
coming.
for pushback that we haven't been experiencing yet. So, does it make a difference if the protest that you're attending is on public or private property and or is permitted or not? Because this is a point of contention for many.
A lot of bad not around about this. If you're
okay, buckle up, folks. This is gonna be a combo.
It's not gonna hurt.
My God,
Okay. If it is on private property, the owner of that private property has the right to tell you to leave. And if they tell you to leave and you choose not to leave, you are running the risk of being arrested. Because at that point you are trespassing. And whereas normally trespassing, hey, get off my yard, you damn kids, is not going to be an issue because it's a protest, because it's a high profile thing, that's going to escalate. So if you are on private property and you are told to leave, my personal recommendation is to go. Get off the private property. And you can take your time leaving. You can hold your signs up while you're leaving. You can signal your signal chat. We're being told to leave. I am leaving. Whatever you want to do, but definitely go. Because if you don't, it's an act of civil disobedience on a level that is going to escalate what is potentially difficult times as it is high tension, right? You don't want to do anything to escalate. They tell you to go, go.
There's different
When you
crimes
are on
involved.
public property, anybody has the right to be on public property. It is public property. You are a member of the public. If there are congestion concerns, if there are safety concerns, of course, law enforcement has the right to tell you that there are concerns. You do not want to escalate. If you are on public property and you are protesting and you do not have a permit and the cops are coming at you and they're telling you there's too many people here, it's too congested, there's people getting violent, there's traffic considerations, you tell them to go talk to your legal liaison, your police liaison. Don't interact with the police at all. If you don't have to, don't. If they have a safety consideration or there's something going on, yes, they can tell you to leave. Then you want them to talk to the liaison and get it all straightened out. You're just one protester in this mob of protesters, right? And you don't want them to be dividing you up and going to individuals. That's why you have your liaison. So they can go talk to the liaison, and with the liaison, they might say it differently. It might not be a question of we want you to leave, we want your entire protest to disband. It could be we don't want people going over there. And we don't want people going over there because it's not safe. That is a different request. And now they have made that because they are talking authority to authority. In which case, you're like, okay, let's see what we can do to help make this thing better. And then you go over there and you talk to the people. I'm going to tell you a secret. When you go to talk to your protesters, the cops have told you that they want those people to move. They are not legally required necessarily to move. But you do not want to escalate the situation. Right.
Oh,
so
yeah, and they'll tell you too.
you go over and talk to your protesters and you can be like, all right, so sheriff, whatever, chief, whomever, officer, whomever, he wants you to move. He thinks you need to move. I think you're fine. What do you want to do? Now, all that cop knows is he sees you pointing back over. All he knows is that you're talking to them. Now you come back and you be like, you go back and you tell the cop, I talked to him. I asked him about moving. They don't want to move. They say they're fine where they're at now. So how do we fix this situation so that everybody is safe and everybody's happy? Because they don't want to move. You never told them to move. You don't have to tell them to move. You went over and talked to them about moving. So now you can go talk to the cop. Now the two of you are going to work it out together. And you're going to come out with a good solution. It's going to work. De-escalates. De-escalates. The word of the day.
And let's wrap this up with one final thought. What is your personal advice for anyone who's undocumented that wants
any
to
undocumented
attend the
person
protest?
who wants to attend the protest? My hat's off to you. You are brave. You are wonderful. You are phenomenal. That's their choice. It's their decision. I'm going to honor their decision. I'm also going to make sure that in any protest that I'm organizing, where I know there's undocumented folks, or even people of color, because you could be totally documented. You could be born. You could be second generation. My parents were born in this country. But if your skin isn't as white as yours and mine, prove it. Prove you were, and you don't even have to. Due process no longer applies. You have brown skin. Boom, I'm dropping you across the border. So if I'm going to, anytime I am organizing a protest, and I know there's going to be undocumented people or people of color, people at high risk, people, marginalized communities that are going to be represented, I'm going to make sure that the more privileged people are protecting the less privileged people, with the understanding that you are privileged right up until the second that you're not.
That's smart.
Because if push comes to shove, your white skin is not going to save you from anything. We've seen that happening already, and it's going to get worse. But as long as people who do have more privilege are protecting and watching out for people who have less privilege, and those people know that they are reasonably safe as they can be in those circumstances. You know, you think about every major social movement, the people who had absolutely no privilege, who had no voice, who had no seat at the table, there were people that had the strength and the courage to go sit at a lunch counter. They had the courage to walk across a bridge. They had the courage to stand in front of the White House. And they knew what they were risking when they did it, and they did it anyway. One of the things I always talk about is I always say, ain't nobody giving us nothing. Nobody has ever given us anything. I may be white, but I'm still a woman. And as a woman,
Nope,
yes,
you gotta fight for it.
this country was built in a way to intentionally exclude me. It was built in a way to intentionally exclude you. Every right you have, you, your mothers, your grandmothers, your great-grandmothers fought, bled, and died for it. And every marginalized person in this country has that grandparent, that great-grandparent, that parent that fought and bled and died so that you could sit here today. And we honor them when we honor the undocumented, the people of color, the people with disabilities. Oh my God, if you've ever seen a person with a disability get tipped out of a wheelchair by a cop, those people were brave.
We need to have a War Stories podcast soon. All right. Well, Julie, I cannot thank you enough for your time today. This has been a blast. We will talk again. Oh, thank you so much for joining us. Godspeed and be safe this Saturday.